It's Zion Ultra Marathon this weekend, and if you're racing it or you're thinking of signing up, this video is for you. I'm gonna tell you everything I wish someone had told me before racing it in the past, using my 2,500 mile experience on how I prepare for a race and going into the specific of the course. We're gonna do some course scouting today. But also what's the gear you should have, what you should think about in terms of drop bag, your crew, your pacer. I'm also racing it this year at the 100 mile. So if you're curious about how it goes, in a week or two I'll be posting the video. The best way to know when that comes out is to subscribe to my channel, where I post about the 100 mile race I do every month. Without further ado, let's dive right in. So the course starts with a segment I would call the road. And the road is a road. It's a dirt road, relatively flat. There's some mild ups and downs, but it's super runnable. What I would say is at the beginning of a race like that, you need to be careful not to expend too much energy. One thing to remember is that the race starts in the dark. Personally, what I do is I always carry on me, even during the day, daylight. It's super light. I come too late to the aid station that has my light and my night equipment. At least I have a lamp. And then you get to the first aid station, Goosebump. That's an aid station you come 3 times, and I think this is a great spot for a drop bag. I know the aid station is early in the race, but I really suggest to take time to refill your water, your electrolyte, eat something, because the next aid station is pretty far. So don't skip the opportunity there. This is what is welcoming you as soon as you start the Mesa here. It's this gorgeous view. You're running on the rim. And bonus for you guys is the climb that we're gonna talk about later. Then it's hands on my favorite part of the course. Last time when I ran it, I had a runner high because it was so awesome. And I know it's not gonna last. This is very short-lived, so you gotta really enjoy it. That's where it gets a little trickier in terms of navigation. The good news is that the sun is rising, so you'll have better visibility as opposed to at night. You'll be following these white dots on rocks sometimes, and it can be very easy to miss one. So pay attention. It's not always super runnable, but it's a very pleasant run up to the turnaround point, which is hands down the highlight of this course. Then you turn around from the turnaround point, and then it's same old, all the way to an aid station that I'm forgetting the name right now. And then you're making your way back to Goosebump aid station. And depending on your distance, if you're doing the 100K or the 100 mile, then you go down the climb, which would be the crux of this course. And the climb is big deal. Do I need poles? And in general, I'm very much pro poles. Zion is a tricky one actually, because there's 3 places where personally I would use poles, short segment, and it's the climb going down, there's a climb going up, and then it's going down from Smith Mesa on Flying Monkey because it's fairly technical. If you find this video helpful, it really helps me a lot if you leave me a thumbs up below. Coming down the climb is much quicker than one would think. And then you face a segment that I call the desert. And the desert might not look like a big deal, but really the race I did in 2021 that I struggled so much, the desert was really the main reason. The heat in that segment is very hard, and there's not a lot of aid station, so make sure to hydrate a lot. And in terms of gear that you need, personally, I would highly recommend that you have some salt pills, and that's where you start needing them. You can see, oh, hello buddy. Ooh, hello. There you go. Yeah. One of the reasons I love this course so much is because of the scenery. And as opposed to when you're in the forest a little bit more, you have quite a lot of space where you will see everything. And when I say everything, is you see the whole course. You just gotta grind that section, make sure you fuel, make sure you hydrate, and make sure you take some salt. And how you come out of the desert matters a lot. Are you in calorie deficit? Are you overheated? Are you tired? And I cannot emphasize this enough, because then you come to the second big climb of this race when you're climbing on Mesa. It's a very mild incline, but remember, you're in the middle of the day, you're on asphalt, and you're climbing. And after that, you're going around Mesa. Mesa is unlike all of the other Mesa, where it's not really a single track that you're gonna be running around. It's more like a Jeep track, and depends on the year, but the worst case scenario is it was muddy, and then you have a lot of cattle over there, and they were stomping everywhere, and that creates this ground that is extremely uneven. So then you're coming down Flying Monkey. Flying Monkey is the worst descent of the whole course. It's pretty steep, but most annoyingly is that it's pretty technical. In terms of shoes, personally, I'm just gonna wear normal running shoes. But the thing to know is that it's pretty rocky, so it's very likely you're gonna bump your toes, and that might lead to either blisters or even losing your toenails. And then you're gonna run to Virgin BMX, which should be basically headquarters of your gear and your crew and everything, because you will experience a lot of heat during the day, but this race is cold at night, so make sure to have a few extra layers packed up ready to go. You also want to have a headlamp. Okay, so I don't usually do that, but I'll show my gear and the way I prepare just before a race. I think it's very helpful to just lay down everything to make sure you don't forget anything, and go from your toes to your head and then what you need. So first, I'll be bringing very normal regular shoes, and for my feet I'm always wearing some liner socks, very thin, and also some smart wool. I'll be pre-taping my feet with this on the hot spot, so that will take care of my feet. Then I have underwears and tights with pockets. It's very practical, and I will use some Body Glide and Deo to help with the chafing. Then upper body, I will start in t-shirt. This is a biking jersey. It dries very well. Also, it has pocket, which is very practical. I will have this, which you can use sometimes for ice or just to cool yourself down with water. I have a desert hat and some sunglasses. It's gonna be pretty hot in the desert. That's the thing to remember. The desert section is what's gonna be tough. In terms of gear I carry, I have Salomon Advanced Skin 12 liters. This is a volume mostly helpful for the night. I will carry 2 soft flasks, and because I'm filming, I also have a GoPro spare battery. I have a safety light always with me, and for this race I'm still debating if I'm gonna use poles or not. The last thing I use are a bunch of pills and some toilet paper. So in there, the pills are related to the toilet paper, but there's also salt pills, which will be very helpful for the desert segment. Is my bag at Virgin BMX, and that's where I will switch to night gear. So what we have is some extra clothing. I have an extra t-shirt in case I'm soaking wet, 2 long sleeves, so fleece basically. I have a rain windbreaker, a puffy. Also I have a hat and gloves. Specifically for this race, I know that I'm gonna need some extra shoes and pairs of socks to change at this aid station. Normally I wouldn't do that. And finally, I know it can be really cold sometimes during Zone 100, so I have an extra layer just in case that I might decide to wear or not. And finally, never forget that, obviously, the headlamp. It's good to have 2, or at least have a backup in terms of battery or something. One last precaution is I usually use Ziploc or a garbage bag to have a layer around my drop bag in general, and especially for my electronic or anything that can get wet. I take all my gear and then I go do the Guacamole Loop. That you're starting in this kind of campground, and at the very beginning you're gonna have to go across a river, and you're definitely gonna have to get your feet wet and muddy and gross. So the whole Guacamole Loop you're gonna do with gross feet at Virgin BMX. I have an extra pair of shoes, and when I'm coming back I'm gonna change. At the beginning, nothing really to say, but then you're gonna follow a road for a very long time. But if you're curious about my own experience from the past year, I post both videos on my channel of the 2021 and 2022 100-mile race, and the time that it didn't go well, that's where I was really crumbling down. I don't want to be too negative right now, but I feel a bit like a failure. Not just for that, but just in general. The Guacamole Loop itself, so you will have a climb on the road. It's not so bad, but if you're feeling bad, it feels pretty bad. And then you're doing the loop itself, so you'll have an aid station there. Depending on how fast you are, you might do that during daytime, or you might do the whole thing during nighttime. Navigation can be an issue, just like all of the other Mesa, but at night it's really adding a factor. So this one is kind of a loop. So you're gonna loop around, come back to the Guacamole aid station, and you should be proud of yourself when you did that, because you've just run 100K and everything from then on is easy. Actually, that's not true at all, but you should still be proud of yourself. And you're gonna see your crew, you're gonna see your people, and you might be taking a pacer, I think, from then on. So things are looking up. And then you're gonna go back to the climb, and you're going back up to Goosebump aid station, which was the beginning of the adventure. On race day, it feels like it was 100 years ago. I think about that as all I gotta do right now is climb the climb. All you need to do is get back to the ridge, or the rim in this case. So now that you're done with the climb, we're back at the familiar segment, which is the road. And you might remember this morning, I was like, yeah, well, it's very runnable. Well, I think it's very runnable at the beginning, but once you're here, it really depends how you feel. And what you're gonna do is at mile 80, you can see your crew. If you have a crew, you can pick up a pacer if you have a pacer. So I think for this drop bag, what is very helpful is to have a drop bag there. You might want to leave your poles, and you might want to have extra layer because it's going to be colder on the ridge, but you also just did a big climb, so you might be sweaty. So what I will do when I'm there is I'm going to change. So we have some Mesa and wire Mesa, very similar to Gooseberry in the sense that it's a lot of single track, sometimes not the easiest to follow. One of the things is the view is gorgeous, having now scouted that during the day, but it's very possible that you're at night and you don't see anything and you're tired. And I think that's one of the time where having a pacer really helps a lot. I know it sounds like a lot to do 20 miles, and it is, but if you made it that far, just remember, you got this. You really got this. The only thing that matters now, you've passed the hurdle now. Now it's just about wrapping things up. Quite frankly, every time I finish that Mesa, I'm pretty destroyed, but I know that I'm basically done with the race. And at the start finish line, what waits for you is a lot of food, a lot of hugs, and a gangbang, which is awesome. You go and you bang that as hard as you can with all of the frustration and the pain that you had been through to get to this point, because you did something that is amazing, something that not a lot of people say they can do, which is you ran 100 miles, and you should be proud of that.
All right, Simon, do the gong.
He's looking great this morning.
If you find it helpful of me giving tips on how to prepare for an ultra marathon, please in the comment below let me know what are the questions you would like me to answer.